Welcome to the Bear Archery Podcast. This week, I've got James Visser from the Bow Disciples. I stumbled upon their page and kind of just fell in love with it. I love just the humor and the comedy found in it and the way they represent hunters just on a kind of a real front. So reached out to James and I really wanted to have him on and just kind of talk about the representation that we as hunters give. We talk a lot about the ebb and flows of hunting and the acceptance of hunting over the years. And, some of those iconic features who have just been really good for hunting. We talk about telling your story, just sharing your story in a way that will encourage and inspire other people to at least look at hunting. We talk about, it doesn't always have to be trying to create a new hunter, but rather just informing the public on why we do it and how we do it. Guys, it's a really fun episode. We end the episode with just some fun stories about hunting. James is from California, and so we kind of talk about the acceptance and the representation that hunters have in California, but also a lot of big game opportunities that California gives you. So, guys, it's a fun episode. It's an informative episode. It's kind of an inspiring episode. I hope you enjoy it, and I hope you learn something. As always, this podcast is brought to you and presented by our good friends over at ScentLock. But, guys, I hope you enjoy the conversation as much as I did.
With over 90 years of innovation, Bear Archery continues pushing toward the goal of founder Fred Bear, making archery accessible for all. Fred believed the history of the bow and arrow were the history of mankind, and everyone should immerse themselves in the outdoor experience. Welcome to the Bear Archery Podcast, where the mission is simple: to hunt, grow, and inspire others.
Guys, you've probably heard the saying, if you don't use it, then you lose it. And the same is very true with your feet and your ankles. And you guys know I am a big proponent of prioritizing your feet. I want to take care of my feet when I'm on the mountain, when I'm in the woods with a good pair of boot and a good pair of socks. However, that ideology of prioritizing your feet, it starts way before you get on the mountain. I want to train my foot and my ankle to be strong. How do I do that? With the barefoot boot. This looks like something you've never seen before, but I introduce you to one of the best ways to strengthen your ankle and your foot. This right here is going to train your foot and your ankle to be strong, the barefoot boot. Guys, we have been taught all of our life that put your foot in a super cushioned shoe with a lot of cushioning and a lot of arch support. Why? Because it's comfortable. However, what that's doing is that's weakening your foot and your ankle because they're not being used the way that God intended them to be used. This right here goes way beyond being a zero drop shoe. This is a barefoot style boot, which is going to replicate being barefoot. In other words, I get to use my feet and my ankles the way that God intended them to be used, and I'm going to strengthen that foot and that ankle. Because, guys, when we don't use our feet and our ankle, it's going to cause a lot of problems. It's going to cause our knees to hurt, our back to hurt. It's going to cause those tissues and the way that functions to break down. So this right here is a training method that I wear on a daily basis as I just go throughout my life to train that foot and that ankle. Now, am I going to strap these on and go on the mountains with them? No, but I'm going to wear these all year long to build that foot and that ankle to be stronger. So when I do put my foot in a high quality, mountain boot, it's going to be stronger and more prepared for the mountain. Guys, these things are incredibly well built. They're incredibly well made. And if you have no idea what I'm talking about with your feet and your ankles, I would highly encourage you to go check out episode 188, where I am with Mr. Chris Duffin, the mad scientist himself, one of the co-founders of Barefoot Boots. He was also a world record deadlift setter and squat setter. He knows about the foot and the ankle, and we talk all about using that and strengthening that with something like a barefoot boot. So, guys, go check out Barefoot Boots. That's BEAR, just like Bear Archery. Barefoot Boots. You can go to the Barefoot store, barefoot.store on the internet, and you can even use code TRAINWILD in all caps to get a discount on your on your pair of barefoot boots or barefoot shoes. But guys, start prioritizing your feet and your ankle. Start strengthening that foot and that ankle so you can be happier and healthier on the mountain. All right, James. So where did the idea behind Bow Disciples even come from, man? Because first off, I love the name, but I'm anxious to kind of jump in and figure out, where all this came from and what you intended to use it for, and what it's kind of turned into.
Yeah, dude. So the intention initially was actually just to kind of have a memory bank of our hunts and archery stuff for like my dad and I, and if I have kids in the future or grandkids, like I thought it would be cool to have some stuff to look back on, or even for myself, like go watch past stuff we done and that was it, man. The beginning, like nobody watched the videos like at all. And then got like a viral video, like 10 in or something, and then got some more subscribers, and then some people watched, and then basically a year in we had 1,000 subscribers, and I thought to myself, like, okay, well, people seem to like the contents, and it just got better over time and grew, and now it's where it's at now. But it definitely didn't start with the intention of like being a YouTuber, it's turned into that, but it's not how it started,
Right. So where'd the name come from? Like, what made you land on Bow Disciples?
Yeah, the name kind of wild because basically me and my buddy Nick, we actually just talked about this in our last podcast episode that's on the YouTube right now. But basically we would joke around when we were way younger, like in 2015, and we would call each other Team Big Dick, right? So we would say Team BD. And then his girlfriend one day goes, I know what that means. And he goes, what, Bow Disciples? And I was like, that name's crazy, So then when we started the channel, I used the name. So that's how it happened.
That's cool. No, yeah. I immediately kind of bought into it because, as a Christian, you hear the word disciple a lot, and you hear, in church, you hear the word be a disciple and spread the gospel. And so, the very definition of disciple is one who accepts and assists in the spreading of a doctrine. And as hunters, that should be our goal, is to want to encourage and teach and help other people grow as outdoorsmen.
100%.
And so immediately I was like, man, I love it, because so many people, I mean, dude, it's so hard. I mean, if you've got a job and you've got kids and you've got bills to pay and you've got a wife that wants you home, it's so hard to find time to hunt. I get that. And so it becomes difficult to try to get other people into hunting like that's hard, because now, if you only have 4 weekends to hunt and you want to take somebody hunting, well, you're taking up a whole weekend of your 4 weekends in that season to hunt. Mm-hmm. And it's difficult, man. I get that. But man, we are losing footing quickly as a hunting community, and we have to create new hunters. We have to spread that, Yep. And so, and not only that, we talked pretty in depth about this last episode, and so I don't want to, dive too deep into it, but there will come a day when non-hunters are given a right to vote on our behalf. Ballot box biology. They're given the right to vote on whether I should be able to hunt or not. So whether I am, quote unquote, discipling new bow hunters, or whether I'm just spreading, the reason why I do this, and the reason why we as hunters are a necessity in the ecosystem, and why, what we do is good, and how we're putting deer back in the woods, how we're putting sheep back on the mountain, how we're doing, if I don't spread that to the non-hunting community, when they go to vote, we have no hope. So I want them to at least say, well, I saw Dylan talk one time, and I heard Dylan talk one time about the ethics behind hunting and about the reasons behind hunting and about the conservation that they do as hunters. So maybe these guys aren't all bad. You know what I mean?
Dude, I mean, yeah, you killed that 100%. I always say the exact same thing. I'm fortunate to have been a bow hunter since I was like 5 years old. I've done it my whole life. So I've watched it kind of ebb and flow in public perception over the years. And I think, obviously now there's a lot of hunting kind of hit a popular peak recently. in the last 5 to 7 years with Cam Haines going on Rogan was really, really big. And that was a blessing, really. Cam, of course, has a ton of haters, and so does anyone else that shares hunting and brings more people into it. But that's a very naive approach, because you're right. In California is where I'm from. It's a perfect example. We can't hunt mountain lions, can't hunt bobcats anymore. Used to be able to. They've tried to take away bear hunting numerous times, and at some point they'll probably accomplish it. But my thing is, anyone, whether it's Bo Disciples, whether it's Cam Haines, whether it's you, anyone who's making more allies of hunting is extraordinarily important if we want our grandchildren and great-grandchildren to be able to hunt. And one thing that I'm really proud of in our videos is, I think, because a lot of our stuff is like archery based and it's really fun and not overly serious, I think it lowers the barrier of entry of someone who wants to get into archery, but they've been scared maybe because it seems so serious and technical. Like, we kind of make it just fun and a riot and like a good time. You can watch a video, you're going to be busting up laughing, or whatever sometimes. And I think we get so many new archers into the sport. They may never even hunt, but if they're watching Bo Disciples and shooting a bow, I guarantee you they're an ally when it comes time to vote. You know what I mean? So I think as hunters, the people that are negative to new hunters, I think they need to switch their perspective, but maybe I'm wrong.
No, you're absolutely not wrong, because, and dude, how many times have you heard it said, well, I don't want to really create more hunters because I don't want to lose my hunting spots. There's only so many tags to go around. And if we start creating all these, dude, that is the most garbage way of looking at things I've ever heard of in my entire life.
It's just selfish, It's selfish and short-sighted too. Now,
and you hear that from people, and I get it from people. I say I get it. I'm not going to say I accept it. I get it from people out west who in their own states have waited for 5 years to draw one tag. I get it. But man, there are so many hunting opportunities in this country, and there are so many hunting opportunities across the country that span from deer to squirrel and hogs and rabbits. It doesn't have to be a world-class elk that you're taking these people to hunt on.
Right.
In fact, I think the most beneficial thing you can do is look at where you live and what needs to be hunted, and introduce people to that species or to that subspecies or to that, way of hunting. If you live in a place that needs 7 deer killed in a year, use killing doe. If you live in a place where 7 does are needed to be killed a year by each hunter, use killing does as a way to introduce somebody to hunting.
100%.
That way you're benefiting your herd. You're benefiting the population of the deer. You're helping a new hunter get connected and get involved. Well, I mean, look at those things and think, oh man, there's a whole bunch of coons that need to be killed in my area because they're taking a massive toll on the turkey population. So I'm going to get a new hunter and I'm going to take them and teach them how to coon hunt. Use those things. I mean, I'm not saying that you're going to take these people on a guided elk hunt every year. You know what I mean?
Yep. No, I think you're dead on. And I also think another factor that I've kind of been talking about recently, I am out west and I do hunt these states, and it has gotten it's gotten harder to get tags, I suppose, a little bit. But I do think that we'll see a shift in that soon, and you'll have less people applying for hunts. And the reason I think that is because when COVID happened, everyone went out and bought a mountain bike or bought a tent or bought a bow. Everyone was getting into these outdoor activities because you had to be outside. But now that that's kind of in the rear view mirror, I believe that a lot of the people that bought a mountain bike or bought a bow to get into hunting, I think they're probably going to kind of shift back to what their life was prior to that. And you're already seeing it in biking or off-roading or whatever. Like, the market's flooded with used bikes, and I think a lot of people will be exiting hunting as active hunters potentially, but they're still most likely going to be allies when it comes time to vote and sign ballot measures, because they've got a taste of it. So Yeah, again, like to your point, I think you just got to create allies. They don't even necessarily have to be hunters. They could just be archers or whatever. But as
Right.
long as they're allies and will support hunting in the outdoors, how is that not a win?
Yeah. No, you're right, dude. It doesn't have to be helping somebody buy a bow and getting them camo and teaching them how to hang a tree stand and teaching them shot placement on a deer and taking them out to hunt. It doesn't have to be that. It can just be having real conversations with real people about why we as hunters do what we do and looking for those opportunities. And I mean,
100%.
it's really easy for me to understand that, as somebody who grew up in church my entire life, and you hear about,
Same.
discipleship. It's the same thing with hunting, like just looking for opportunities to say, well, hey, this is why I hunt. Oh, hey, there was a meat shortage during COVID. I have some meat. Would you like some? Well, how'd you get meat, dude? Nobody can get meat right now. Well, I actually go out and harvest my own organic, clean sources of protein in deer and elk and bear and moose. Would you like to have some meat? And looking for real opportunities to educate these people on why we do what we do. But,
100%.
Taking a step back, it's what you said. You've lost mountain lion hunting. You've lost wolf hunting. You've lost, people are taking away, hunting with hounds in Alabama or, certain bow hunting seasons in Georgia. And it's death by 1,000 cuts, man. They're never going to just come and say bow hunting is now illegal. You can no longer shoot anything with a bow, but they're going to slowly take more and more away until we look and say, where did it go?
Yeah.
Like what happened?
Yep.
And that's why we have to stand united, man.
100%. I mean, you just look at how politics have worked for hundreds of years, and you're exactly right. That is how politicians operate. They operate off passing little tiny pieces of legislation that's usually hidden in some other bill somewhere, and they work on it incrementally over hundreds of years. And then eventually it's like, oh man, now we can't have a gun, but it doesn't start with that,
Right.
Not to say that'll happen, but I promise you there's people that would like it to,
Yeah,
so
for sure.
We just got to keep that in mind always as hunters. But I think, yeah, I mean, I think the most toxic thing is just, again, the guys who are just like, you go read like a meme page or something, or like a forum, and people are just like such haters to like guys like Steven Ranella or Cam Haynes. They're like, oh my God, they're like the worst person ever, ruining hunting. And I'm like, dude, they've done so much more to extend hunting than you will ever do,
Yeah.
But I think it's jealousy oftentimes, like when people are, hating on people like that or whatever. But I think it's sad.
Yeah. Well, people don't, I think there's just a lot of misconceptions in this industry about the commercialization of hunting and about, these guys who are so outspoken and, have millions of followers and are on Netflix, and millions of people are watching their shows. And I think there's just such a misconception that those people create all of these new hunters that are taking our spots and look at what they're doing. They're driving the price of tags, and now I can't get tags because they've commercialized it so much that now it's so expensive, and they've commercialized it so much that now tags at Western Hunt Expo are going for $750,000. And, all of these misconceptions,
Right.
when in all reality, all they're doing is reaching millions of people that will now, when it comes time to vote, they've never hunted. They've watched it and they thought, dude, that's really cool. He just shot a bear. He just shot it. That's really cool. They're never going to become hunters. But now when it comes to the vote, like you said, they've created these allies, and they thought, man, dude, the way that Steven Ranella articulated about why he hunts,
Yep.
I get it. I see it now. And so, again, we're not selling out all of your tags because they watched one episode of a bear hunt with Ranella. But we've created a whole bunch of allies now that might just happen to understand why we do what we do.
100%. Yeah. I mean, the audience is so important, I mean,
Yeah.
if no one's there to listen, to your message, or no new people are there to watch, it's like, I was talking to Brianna about this just yesterday. Like, what's important to grow a message or a brand is always impressions and like viewership, how many eyeballs you can drive, and then how that message connects. And I said to her, look, there's a reason why companies pay astronomical money to have a Super Bowl commercial. That's how they grow their product, is all those eyeballs on it. So you're not going to grow hunting with no eyeballs. It's just not going to happen.
Right. Yeah. And you're also not
you
going to
could grow it through tradition, like theoretically, but tradition
that's
with
dying
people
off quick.
and people, not only do the traditions die quick, but like people are having less kids now too. So it's like, if that's your only means of growing hunting, it's kind of a bleak outlook. Like you have to your point, disciple to grow it externally, or else it's going to be gone. And if you look at the number of people with hunting licenses, it's actually decreased, like year after, it's not going up,
Well, and you say we're having less and less kids, but the kids that we do have are also being inundated on all sides that what your daddy does is wrong.
Oh yeah.
That your dad is unnatural. Your dad's a freak of nature.
Yep.
Your dad shouldn't be shooting these animals. You disgusting. I can't believe you would eat that meat. Did you know it was alive 3 days ago and now you're eating it? I'm like, man, like they're just being taught that the way that we have always lived, that the way my ancestors survived, that the way, not too many years ago that you had to kill or you didn't eat. Like that's not too far fetched.
No.
You look at my great great grandfather. If you told him you don't hunt, well, then what are we going to eat? Like, what do you mean we don't hunt? And dude, I live in the Midwest. Everybody knows a hunter. Everybody has seen it, been around it, heard of it. But yet my children still are being inundated with the new hipster, we only eat salads and carrots. And I'm like, dude, listen, you're going to suck on a piece of meat and you're going to get strong and healthy. You ain't eating a carrot, dude.
Dude, it's wild. It's wild. But, like I said, I don't think hunting's in that bleak of a state. I think,
you're right.
I think it's in a great spot, really. And I think having more and more people have different ways of sharing hunting, whether it's like what we do or someone like, Steve Rinella, who's very like, precise and like more production value, like, or whatever, that any of these, as long as what you're doing is legal and ethical, I'm cool. Like I used to be the guy who, when I was younger, I would be the guy who was like, oh, well, that person got that deer on a high fence or on private, like, they're not as hard as me. Like, I used to be that guy. But now I'm like, again, as long as you're not hurting anybody and what you're doing is legal, I'm good. I don't know.
Yeah.
Like, I just think that we pigeonhole each other a little bit too much.
Absolutely. And that's exactly what I was saying by death, death by 1,000 cuts. Dude, I may never hunt in California, but when it comes time for Californians to be put up against the wall and say, hey, we're taking your rights, I dang sure better stand with California, because when it comes time for Kansas, when it comes time for my state, I want the Californian hunters to stand with me.
Yep.
Same with like, beagles and chasing squirrels. Like I'm not a squirrel guy. I don't hunt squirrels. However, if squirrel rights are trying to be taken in Arkansas, then I want to stand up and fight for those guys, because when it comes time for my turn, I want them to stand up and fight for me.
100%.
We have to stand together. I don't care what kind of bow you shoot.
No.
I don't care if you shoot a stick bow, a crossbow, a compound. I don't care if you shoot them with a rifle. Heck, if it's legal, I don't care if you shoot them with a stinking RPG. I don't care.
Yes.
All I know is that I hope we can find a little bit of common ground and say, you're a hunter, I'm a hunter. Let's stand together and do this thing,
So I did this podcast called Hunting Stories Podcast, and I just think that, like, it was really cool because all you do is go on there and he asks you to tell a hunting story that was like one of your favorites or most meaningful or whatever, and you hop on there and tell a story. And I'm like, this is nice, because no one's sitting there going, oh, well, you shot that deer out of a tree stand, so it doesn't count because it wasn't spot and stock on the ground. Right. You just tell the story and people listen. I think it's cool. And I think that's one thing I like about the podcast we've been doing. And we're not podcasters. It's just like a side thing. We built this studio and we film it like multicam. It looks pretty cool, but we've only done a handful. But the one we just the one we just recorded, it'll be out, I don't know, in a few days here, but it was cool because we're on there, dude, and then we're talking about anything. Like, you know what I mean? It's not only about hunting and archery. In fact, like, we could be talking about the new Drake album or like, you know, some movie we saw or like what it goes kind of anywhere. And then we're talking about like philosophical stuff. And I'm like, I think this is a little bit more engaging to like the casual hunter who could just tune in, listen to a conversation where you don't know kind of where it's going. And then in there, though, there's like stuff about that ties back to what we do, you know. And I think Rogan, again, does a really good job of that as well. Like he covers so many topics and is knowledgeable about a lot of them. So I don't think anyone's got more people into hunting hardly than Rogan over the past 10 years.
Not at all.
You know,
I've said it many times that he's the best thing that has happened to hunting in a long time.
I agree.
And you've talked about the ebb and flows of hunting and kind of the stages of the cultural acceptance of hunting.
Mm-hmm.
And I believe that if we were to draw that out on a map, you could literally put a dot that said, this is when Joe Rogan became a hunter.
Mm-hmm.
And you could see the direct trend in that. And by no means is he's the only one in history that you could dot Fred Bear, you know, you could dot Johnny Morris, you could dot, I mean, there's definitely people,
Chuck Adams,
Chuck Adams, you could dot other people for sure.
Oh, of course. Jim Shockey,
but but I do believe that he is one that you could put a dot and say, this is the moment he became a hunter. Now let's see the trend from there on out.
Yeah.
You know, and I hope that, you know, and I think you believe the same way. I hope one day that I can look and say, man, I really have made a difference. Like I can look back and I can, you know, I'm never going to create millions like Rogan. I'm never going to change the hearts and mind of millions, but I hope that one day I can look back, you know, Fred Bear had a mentor. I'm just saying, and maybe you create the next Joe Rogan. Like maybe you create the next Fred Bear. Maybe you create an influential change that will be influential.
Mm-hmm.
And maybe you're the one that looks back and say, man, I'm glad I got so-and-so into hunting because look what they've done. You know what I mean?
100%. Yeah. I think that's really cool. And, you know, like I said, I think just like in any industry, this is not exclusive to hunting, but I think anything, whether it's, I don't know, rock climbing, like I'm sure there's people that are like, you rock climb the wrong way and you need to rock climb like me. But I think like, it's just more important to say good job. You know, someone tells you a hunting story. Oh, I shot this forked horn with a 30-06 from 250 yards. And I have two options there. I could either go, oh, well, that's a small buck and I only hunt with a bow. So, or I can just go, oh, dude, awesome. That's a great job. Tell me the story about it.
You know,
to me, I would rather do the latter personally.
Absolutely, man. And here's what I've learned. And I have the very unique ability, being that I work for Pope and Young, getting to talk to some of the biggest, baddest hunters literally on planet Earth. Like in December, I shared a camp with Chuck Adams.
That's insane.
And so
that's insane.
But here's what's insane. Any of those guys, you can talk to guys who have killed new world records, who have completed the Super Slam, and the guys that are genuine sportsmen, the guys that are genuine outdoorsmen and love what they do and how they do it, they're just as interested to hear about the doe you shot last year as they are to tell you about their world record.
100%.
Like, and that's what I've learned. Like, you're listening to all these stories and they're like, but what about that buck you shot last year, Dylan? And I'm like, it was a 120-inch whitetail. What do you mean? Like, and they're like, yeah, tell us about it, dude. And they're like pumped to hear it, you know, because they're genuine sportsmen. Like it's not all about, you know, who's got more entries in the book or who's got the bigger antlers or, you know, who's got the biggest, baddest trophy room. It's, hey, we're all in this together and I want to hear about your success just as much as I want to share my success with you. Yep. And that's what, you know, those real hunters, like the bad to the bone hardcore guys. I remember the first Pope and Young event I went to thinking, well, this is going to suck. Like, cause you're going to hear all these crazy stories and you're going to be sitting here going, yeah, dude, I shoot a couple whitetails every year. But then you realize, man, these guys are just as stoked for you to shoot a doe as they are to shoot a new world record. Like,
yeah, dude,
it's once you get past all the butt heads on social media and get to the people that are actually in the industry, they're legit.
I agree. I agree 100%. I mean, and even most people on social media, I would say 98% are great.
Yeah.
And just
No, yeah,
like
you're
this,
right.
would sit here and have the same conversation. But I think the 2% are really loud sometimes.
Yeah.
And
No,
they're
you're
more
right.
likely to drop comments. And then, like, well, for example, one time I got shared on this archery meme page. And it was crazy, man. Like, it was a funny video. He did a good job. It was a funny video. But then, like, the comments, it was like, I mean, dude, we get, I don't know, millions of views a month. Like, I'm used to some troll comments. It's no big deal. But like, it almost became like a cesspool. You know, it was like one person left a negative comment, and then it was like a battle of like who could hate James worse. You know, like then it was like crazy. And I'm like, y'all have a weird perspective, you know, to like hate on someone you never met your whole life from a 10-second clip that's like intended to be funny. You know, it's just like,
Yeah.
but I think those people are far fewer than the people that would have this conversation. You
Right.
know, I just don't think that the positive people, I think, are generally a little bit quieter than the negative people, it seems.
You know, and not to open up a can of worms, but I believe those people that would leave those comments would have this conversation too,
Probably.
because they truly think they're doing something good for the industry by telling people that they're not doing it right. They truly think they're doing you a service by telling you your form is garbage. They truly think they're doing you a service by telling you that you need to kill bigger deer.
Yeah.
They truly think in their mind, and that's what's so wrong. Like, they have it so backwards that they think they're right. Like,
yeah, that's insane.
and it's
That's
not
insane.
like, look at me, I'm a douche. It's like, man, I'm so good. Like, I help so many people, tell them how wrong they are. And it's like, dude,
yeah,
you are creating so much damage, and you are creating so much animosity towards hunting and towards just the self-destruction of us as hunters that it's not even funny.
I shot my first animal with a bow when I was 5. And dude, Chuck was always like, dude, you might as well have been Paul McCartney to me, dude. You know, when I was a kid, him and Michael Waddell were like gods to me, dude. Like, you know, it was, Chuck, I literally have pictures of me with like my first handful of deer and pigs and stuff. And I'm like a little kid, dude. And I literally have the same beanie hat that Chuck always wore, you know, like Chuck. And then I saw him once at TAC, and I was like, oh my gosh, bro, that's Chuck Adams. I was like, that's crazy. I didn't get to talk to him, but the guy's a legend to me. And then Waddell was always cool because, and still is cool, but I always felt like, you know, for Christmas or like my birthday, my parents would buy me those Monster Bucks VHS tapes, and I would always watch them. And I was so excited to get them every year. Like, I knew that was a gift I was getting. I'd pop in the VHS, watch it forever. But I always thought Michael was just like so cool and so fun. And like, he was like a rock star of hunting. Like, but before that was kind of like a thing, people were kind of more subdued, a little more serious. And then he came in, was so cool. And I was like, that's what I want to do. When we started making videos, I was like, I want to be more like Waddell, and like should be funny and, you know, be good for sure, but also like be a riot, you know? And those are like my 2 favorite guys.
Dude, Michael is one of the funnest dudes like on planet Earth. Like, so one time at a Pope and Young convention, he was the keynote speaker, and we, you know, for the banquet dinner, it's, you know, it's a $75 meal. I mean, they're bringing out incredibly nice food and serving you this. And well, this was kind of coming on the backside of COVID. This was like, you know, restrictions were released April 1st. Our convention was April 10th, you know? And wow. Like, we just had no idea really what was going to happen. We didn't know how the food was going to work. This was all just kind of a rush. And so we way oversold tickets for food that we had. And so we're like, what are we going to do? We've got, you know, 50 people that are not going to have meals. And so we just put out a VIP meet and greet pizza and beer with, you know, Michael Waddell and whoever else was there, Remy Warren, and just whoever, whatever kind of, you know, VIP celebrity hunters were there. And we also didn't know how they were going to take it though. We're like, hey, we're going to do pizza and beer before the banquet. Sorry. And Michael was like, dude, like, and 100% sincerity is like, dude, if I can have pizza and beer over some, frou-frou steak and dinner, I'm in, dude.
100%.
And I'm in. And so I was just like, man, that's cool. So no, he really is a cool guy and super fun to hang out with. And, I had heard so many stories. How old are you, if you don't mind me asking?
31.
Okay. So you are kind of, I would say, the tail end of the Chuck Adams era, like the tail end of the people who just are all in Chuck fans,
Oh, for sure. A lot of people nowadays don't even probably know who he is, which is crazy. Yeah. That's nuts.
But I grew up with a dad who idolized Chuck Adams. Like, and I grew up with a dad who doesn't, he doesn't get fired up for much, like I could call him and say, hey dude, I just met Patrick Mahomes. And he'd be like, okay, who cares? And when I started working for Pope and Young, I'm like, dude, I'm going on a hunt with so-and-so. Dude, I got to meet so-and-so. Dude, I got to hang out with so-and-so. And he's just like, cool, that's cool, man. I'm glad you're doing that stuff. But when I was sitting on the couch in my folks' home and my phone rings and it says Chuck Adams. And so I just answered it on speaker. And my dad, he was like flipping through the channel. And when he hears the voice, he just stops and just looks over, drops the remote. And he's like, is that Chuck Adams? And I'm like, yeah. And he literally went like a 12-year-old girl, like just all giddy. And I'm like, dude, you got to pull it together here, man. Like you got to pull it together here, dude. And so we were at an event recently and I went over to the bear booth and I'm like, hey, I need a recurve. And they're like, okay, for what? And I'm like, I'm going to have Chuck sign it and get it to my dad. And they're like, all right, just take that one or whatever. And so I take the bow and I FaceTime my dad and I'm like, hey, I got you a new bow. He's also that generation that never spends the penny, like I got the old, 1984 that's still shooting good. So that's what I'm going to shoot. And I'm like, hey, I got you a new bow. And he's like, dude, are you serious? That's unreal. Oh my gosh, look at the wood. It's so beautiful. And I'm like, yeah. And I figured I could have this guy sign it for you. And I pan the camera over and Chuck's signing the bow and he's like, oh my gosh, holy crap. And he literally goes into like the speech. Yeah. He's like, dude, I used to want to be you. Oh my gosh, I used to read your books and I had your posters all over my room. And I'm like, Dad, calm down, bro. Like, calm down.
That's so funny, dude.
And now you go to his office and the bow's like framed in his office. And I'm like, well, I'm glad you got that, Dad. But
I love it.
Guys, I oftentimes say that I always have a binocular harness on my chest. What good is a binocular harness without a good set of binoculars? I am a sucker for fine Japanese glass. I love good optics. I love spending time behind it. It's just fun. It's fun to go out and look at stuff, but also good optics make spotting and looking through them a whole lot more enjoyable. Kowa Optics does it and does it better than anyone else, in my opinion. They have some of the finest Japanese glass on planet Earth. It's all I've used for the past, 8 years or so. This right here, the Kowa 55, is one of the best products ever made in the history of the universe. It is the smallest, most compact scope you can get, but it still offers phenomenal glass. It's really hard to find a spotter that is this small, this light, this compact. You can throw it in your backpack. You can leave it in your truck. It's so small and so compact, but it still offers phenomenal glass. This is one of my favorite products ever. Guys, if you're in the market for new optics, I would highly encourage you to check out Kowa Optics because they are, in my opinion, the best glass that you can buy. Go check them out. I love talking to people who live in California, who live in New York, who live in Australia, places where hunting is such a foreign concept to the majority. How does that even, because dude, like I said, I live in the Midwest. There's more cows than people. If you're not a hunter, you know a hunter, you've seen a hunter, you've been around a hunter, dad's a hunter, grandpa's a hunter.
Yeah.
That concept is not foreign to anybody.
Mm.
I mean, is it like that you, like, if you wear camo into the Walmart, is people like, dude, what is this freak doing?
Yeah. If you did that, for sure. I mean, you're not seeing people wear camo or like whatever. But I will say this, like, I think what a lot of people kind of miss about California is, of course, if you're watching Vox or, you know, listening to the podcasts that like I listen to, like PBD or whatever, or Rogan or whatever, you probably think California is just like total anarchy and chaos all the time. And there's a dude outside with like a gun right now robbing a store or something, which maybe in some places it's like that. But I think what people miss is there's so many people in the state. It has a huge population that even though us hunters are a minority, I would venture to say we probably have more hunters and archers than like almost any other state, because we're starting with so many people. So here in San Diego, like we have a ton of guys or girls who shoot bows, shoot rifles, hunt, like are in the outdoors, like big time, lots. Like for example, we're doing this 3D shoot May 18th and 19th called the Bow Disciples Challenge in local here. It's at this place called Lake Henshaw. It's like an hour from here. And dude, I mean, last year we had 159 paying shooters coming from 5 different states to our event, and most of them are locals, but we do have people travel in. This year we're doing the second time, and I bet we'll have 200 plus. Who knows? Could be 300. I don't know. It's going to be a lot. But how many states could you do that? Have a shoot and pull that many people to come shoot bows? Like you probably couldn't do that in your hometown, I'm assuming, So there's probably not that many people that, shoot bows. But because there's so many people, even if it's a small percentage, that's still a lot of people interested. So I think people would be surprised how many people are not only hunters or archers, but like actually like proficient ones too,
Here's what I've learned about those states that are just, have that bad rap. Once you get out of your Los Angeleses, out of your Sacramentos, out of your San Diegos,
San Francisco.
Yeah.
San Francisco's rough, but yeah.
Once you get out of those spots, if you go to Oregon is the butthole of America. But once you get out of Portland, it's really a cool state.
Yeah.
Same with, California. If you get out of New York City, same with New York. I had this misconception in my head about New York, and then I go to New York and it's like outside of New York City, the place is incredible. I mean, just beautiful. A world that, oh my gosh, I would love to hunt it. I would love to just go and hike some of those hills. I mean, it's gorgeous. And once you really get out of those places, you realize, man, there's a whole lot of good people everywhere. Like there's a whole lot of good people in Oregon. There's a whole lot of good people in California. There's a whole lot of good people, in New York. You just have to get out of those places that are so saturated with just wickedness. I mean, I don't even know what else to say. I mean, just sick and twisted mentalities. But once you get out of those places, man, there's a lot of good people and there's a lot of good conversations to be had about hunting. There's a lot of good hunting to be had. Dude, California has a ton of big game you can chase. I mean, what all do you hunt there? What's your go-to species in a year in California?
So when I'm hunting local, really the only thing I hunt routinely in California is mule deer. Oh, and blacktail deer and mule deer. We have like a real small subspecies of mule deer. You can't really see them, but I hunt deer and blacktail deer, mule deer, sometimes turkeys, but we also have bears. I haven't hunted bears, but we do have bears.
Good bears too.
We have like world-class bull elk, huge elk, but there's like one tag, like you can't really get a tag. And then we have bighorns, which obviously you can't really get a tag either, but like we have a lot of wild pigs, of course. Like we got a lot of stuff, coyotes. So yeah, there's certainly hunting opportunity to be had for sure. And I do apply for all those other things. I just haven't drawn them yet, but, I do travel all over the West and hunt, other states as well. And I will be going to Indiana this year, actually, to be hunting, whitetail for my first time. I've shot coos, like this is a coos deer. but I've never done like a true whitetail hunt. So that'll be pretty cool. And I'm looking forward to it. I like to hunt all styles. Like as long as it's with a bow, like I said, archery's my real passion. Like I've always shot bows and love that. But beyond that, dude, I don't care if I'm sitting a tree stand, a ground blind, glassing and stalking. That's my favorite hunting of all time is spot and stalk hunting for big mule deer. It's probably what I think I'm best at too. But I love all of it, you know, like I'll just do any style of hunting and have a blast. So I'm looking forward to trying some things some areas I haven't been to, you know.
For sure, man. You know, and I always tell people like, spot and stalk out west, you know, you're on an elk hunt, you're on a mule deer hunt. Like that is way more difficult, physically more taxing than whitetail hunting, 100%. And it is way more of a quote unquote hunt. And what I mean by that is because usually, you know, like when I roll into Idaho to elk hunt this year, I'm going to have 8 days to do it. Like I've got to find them, locate them, figure out where they're coming from, where they're going to, and go kill them.
Yep.
Whereas whitetail hunting is a year-long chess match. It's a year-long.
Yep.
Like the actual quote unquote hunt isn't when you go and sit in the tree stand, in my opinion.
I agree.
It's the weeks before season when you're sitting behind a spotter. It's the running the trail cameras and figuring out where they're coming from, where they're going, what time are they using this trail? Are they, you know, where are they bedding at? Where are they feeding at in the afternoon versus in the mornings? It's all of that goes into, all right, this is where I'm going to sit. And then you go sit and wait, you know? So it's a complete different ball game. There's stuff to be learned on both sides, 100%. And that's why I tell people, like, don't be so one-sided. Like, don't be so narrow-minded as to how I do it is the only way to do it. Because if you try it another way, you're going to learn a lot of stuff.
Yeah, not to mention, I mean, I think one of the reasons I've been a pretty successful hunter throughout the years and consistent is because I never go into a hunt thinking like I'm only going to do it if it's this way and like it's like, no, like let's go in there, figure out what's going to be the best way to potentially fill a tag here, and then let's like put our chips in that basket. But I think I do think there's some people that are like, unless it's like exactly like this, then I'm just like, I'm not gonna do it. And I'm like, I don't know if that's the best to like be well-rounded, but either way, you know. I do have a question for y'all. Like, is Bear and Pope and Young like combined somehow? Or because I see you got the Bear logo back there and you were talking about being with Pope and Young. So are those like somehow combined?
So no. They are. So Bear is a corporate partner of Pope and Young. So they have a partnership, but they're not, you know, we have tons of partners. We work with Pope and Young works with several different bow companies. I would be the main connection between the two. So I've worked for Bear Archery to host their podcast for, you know, going on 5 years now.
Wow.
And I actually met the guys at Pope and Young through doing the Bear Archery podcast. So it's actually kind of a really crazy story as to, you know, kind of where I got to where I'm at. I was hosting the Bear Archery podcast and I get a phone call one day and they said, "Hey, Jim Willems is in your hometown bow hunting." And I'm like, okay, who in the crap is Jim Willems? And they said he's the president of Pope and Young. And I was like, well, that'd be cool. And like, yeah, here's his number. You should give him a call and have him on the podcast. And I was like, okay. And so I call him like, hey, this sounds weird, but I heard you're in my town bow hunting. And he was like, yeah, I am. And I was like, well, I host Bear Archery's podcast. Would love to get you on the podcast. And so he comes over to my house and we do a podcast. And we just became buddies. Like we just became friends. And every time he would come through town, we meet up and shoot bows. And, you know, I decided he's exclusively a traditional guy, only shoots recurves. And so I decided to kind of take that journey. And so, you know, he kind of helped me. And next time he came into town, brought me a recurve and taught me how to shoot it. And so we just became friends. And we were sitting there eating lunch one day and he just says, "Hey, Pope and Young needs a new marketing director. Are you in?" And I was like, sure. I mean, I guess.
Yeah.
And so started working for Pope and Young.
That's cool.
So yeah, it's been kind of a journey. They work a lot, you know, they work on a lot of things together, a lot of conservation initiatives. Bear Archery supports the Pope and Young youth program pretty heavily. You know, they So yeah, I mean, they work on things together, but Pope and Young works with Hoyt and Expedition and Matthews, and we work with a lot of different boat companies, but definitely Bear is one of our best partners. So you mentioned telling hunting stories and how that is, a good way to grow the hunting community, a good way to grow the reach. So what is your best? And here's what's interesting. Here's what I learned. We were sitting around at a men's event this weekend, and somebody said that. I said, "What's your favorite hunt?" And not one of them told the story of their biggest deer. Like, because that usually doesn't equate to like the best hunt. So what is that best story that you've got? Just that number one, man, that was crazy.
Dude, I guess a lot of good ones, but my biggest deer is actually a pretty good one. But
I'm not saying the big ones aren't good stories.
yeah.
They're usually
I guess I could tell the story of this Coues deer right here. So this is pretty cool. I've hunted states that have Coues deer for a long time, but like I said, I'm a mule deer guy. That's like my favorite thing to hunt. If I could only hunt mule deer with a bow, I would be perfectly happy. But I always said I would glass up Coues deer, and people would always say, "Are you ever going to hunt a Coues deer?" I said, "Well, if I see one that I can potentially put a good stock in on, and it's an 8-point or bigger, I'll go try." So I glass up. My dad actually glasses up this buck, and he's a long ways away. And this day, it was insanely windy. I mean, like gusting crazy. So I'm trying to see if this is an 8-point Coues deer. I can tell it's a buck, but I'm like, he's so far, and my glasses are shaking like this as on the tripod. So I'm like tucking behind stuff, trying to see. Finally, I see it's an 8-pointer after like an hour of trying to find out. But he bombs down the hill with this doe and goes into this big ravine, and I can't see him anymore, which usually in this terrain, if you lose sight of the deer, you're not going to be able to make a play on them unless you can kind of like, they come on the next hill and you can see them. Like, they just disappear so fast, especially the Coues deer. So I'm like, the wind's howling. And I'm like, okay, well, the wind direction's good. I'm just going to bonsai it up there, like up into that ravine and see if I can get on top of that rise and see him. And I didn't think this would really work, but I bomb across the desert, get up on this little hill, and I can see him. He's like running like 2 or 3 does in the back of this canyon, but I have nowhere to go. I'm like, he's like 200 yards and I can't get any closer. So I'm like, well, I've heard Coues deer are pretty aggressive, and it's the rut. So I just like, I grunt as loud as I can at him. And at first I didn't think it really worked, but then he starts pushing the does towards me, but across the ditch, like on the other side of this ravine. And I'm thinking to myself, like, it's going to be just too far. I range it as like 110 yards or something. I'm like, there's no chance I'm shooting that far in the wind at a Coues deer. I wouldn't shoot that far regardless, unless it was a follow-up shot, So he comes across, and then there's like, I'm here, there's a big ditch, he's here, and then there's like another rolling hill. And the 2 does go up and over the rolling hill. And I said, all right, as soon as he crests that little hill, I'm going to run down this and get on top and see if I can close the distance. So he goes out of sight. I stand up. I run as fast as I can down this ravine because it's howling. He's not going to be able to hear me. Plus, they're on the other side of the thing. So I run as fast as I can down this ravine, run up the other side. I get to the top. I peek over. Sure enough, he like right there, like 20, 30 yards. But he bumps up away up this hill. So I have an arrow. I grunt at him. Shoot like almost straight up, up this cliff. And I watched the arrow. It was a cool shot because I knew the range the deer was, but there was a bush like right here. But I knew from where I was shooting, it would go over the bush into the buck. So I held the pin, let the arrow go, thumped him. I watched him. I wasn't positive. I mean, it sounded like I smoked him and it looked good, but I wasn't positive because the visual. So I watch him bomb up this hill. And he turns to come back down, and I see his front legs just getting shorter and shorter. And before you know it, he's like tumbling down this cliff. And I was like, oh my gosh, that was insane, So I like look over to my dad glassing like 2 miles away, and I'm thinking he watched this. I'm like, I'm not getting a call or anything. So I call him. I'm like, hey, did you just see that? And he goes, no, like I couldn't find you. I lost you. And I was like, no, you can see me. Like I'm looking right at you. I go, I just shot that coos deer buck. Like it was crazy, dude. But it happened like so fast, and it was like kind of a stalk on a whim, you know, like most of my stalks are really planned out and like precise. This one was more like, well, let me just go see if I can see him again. And then like it just kind of worked out. I don't know. There was like a lot of commotion, and it was pretty cool. And that was my first coos deer. So,
You know, here's what I've learned about coos deer. People either absolutely love coos deer hunting and they can't get enough of it. That's all they want to do. They want to go all the time to coos deer hunt.
mm-hmm.
Or not really for me. You know, there is no like I've never met somebody who's like in the middle on coos deer, you know?
I feel like that's
either,
me kind of like, I think I am kind of in the middle, you know, like I love them. I think they're awesome. Like every year I go out, I'm always looking for like a big mule deer, you know, but dude, I mean, I'll get just as excited. Like if I see like a 10, you know, like a big coos deer, I'm like, okay, I'm changing my foot, like for sure. It's like my number one choice is a big mule deer, but I mean, if I see like a 165-inch mule deer buck or like a 120 coos deer, I would go for the coos deer for sure, you know, but it's just like, I don't often see bucks of like a crazy caliber. I feel like where I hunt, I tend to see bigger mule deer more often, but I have for sure seen some hammer coos deer as well.
Yeah, no, I don't know. I don't know what the, you know, I've never got that. I've never got, because there's a whole lot of animals that people are like, yeah, you know, if I get a tag, cool, I'm down for that. But I don't know. Coos deer is just always like, I don't know what that divisiveness is in coos deer, but I think the hunting just sucks. I mean, they're hard to hunt. You know, it's the wiry little animal, and they live where there's not a whole lot of cover to get in on them usually.
Yeah,
I mean, there's a reason they call them. I mean, they're little ghosts, dude. That's what they are.
Yep.
So I don't know. But I've just kind of realized it's one of the most dividing animals. Like either you love it or you hate it. It's kind of like sheep hunting. You know, there's not a lot of sheep dudes that are just like, yeah, man, if I draw a sheep tag, cool. I mean, you're either a sheep guy or you're not, you know?
Dude, I would, when I was a kid, my like dream was always to shoot a bighorn sheep with my bow. And one day maybe I will. You know, it's obviously very hard to get drawn. And unfortunately, I had a ton of points at a very young age in Arizona. And I wasn't applying for 5 years because I was doing the over-the-counter deer tag. And so I wasn't putting in for deer. But also, I wasn't putting in for sheep, which I didn't realize. And I went to apply the 6th year, and all my points were gone. So I'm like, I call them up. I'm like, hey, I had 13 sheep points, and now it says I have 0. And they said, oh, well, you didn't apply for 5 consecutive years, so you lose all your points. And dude, I had 13 points. And I think that was in 2018. So I would have been like, I don't know, like 25 or whatever that is with 13 points. And that was without putting in for 5 years. Like I could have had 20 points at 25. Like, because my dad was putting me in so young. Dude, it was devastating, bro. So unfortunately, I would be getting close to having a chance now. But that was a big mistake, unfortunately. But,
oh my God.
You know, luckily I'm still young. So like, I think one day I'll get a tag. You know, it'll be a while.
The thing about sheep is everybody says how outrageously expensive they're getting. Well, everything is getting outrageously expensive.
Yeah.
You know, if you look 20 years ago, a sheep was 20 grand to go kill. Well, a brand new pickup was 20 grand.
Yeah.
Now to go kill a sheep, it's going to cost you 80 grand, 70 to 80 grand. Well, a new pickup, 70 to 80 grand. Like It's going up with everything else. The demand for it is higher. It costs more. It's going to cost more. Now, here's what I don't like though. is everybody equates the cost of sheep tags going up to Wild Sheep Foundation and them selling these tags for an outrageous amount of money. Them selling that one tag, the Colorado Bighorn Governor's tag, does not define the cost of the rest of the tags. All of that money goes directly into putting Colorado Bighorn sheep back on the mountain. So it's going to help you as a hunter. All of that money, listen, for those of you who don't know how it works, none of that money goes to the Wild Sheep Foundation. All of that money goes right back to Colorado and helping to put sheep back on the mountain. So the price of sheep tags are going up, but everything else is going up too.
Yep.
That's just how it works.
Yeah, 100%. But yeah, I mean, I would love to do a sheep hunt one day for sure. Is your favorite animal to hunt whitetails?
No, yeah, yes, no. So I always tell people, if you had to say, Dylan, you can only hunt one animal the rest of your life, it's going to be whitetails, because I can hunt them, within a 5-hour driving distance. I can be in 5 states that I can shoot whitetails in, whereas if I was to say elk, okay, well then you only get to kill 1, maybe 2 a year. And then you got to play the draw game and you might not get to hunt, So if I had to pick one species to hunt the rest of my life, it would be whitetails. But if you said you only have one more hunt to go on, like you can only go on one more hunt, it would probably be like a big coastal brown bear. I have just like a little, like, bears just get me fired up. Like, I love bear hunting. I don't get to do it near as much because, again, I got to travel 20 hours and, spend a lot more money and time, effort, energy. So I only get to hunt, bears once a year. But if I was to only have one hunt left and money was no object, it would probably be a giant coastal brown bear.
Yeah, that's cool.
What about really you? Cool. You only get one animal.
For me,
tomorrow I'm sending you on any hunt.
Yeah, it would be mule deer for sure. Yeah, definitely a mule deer. It's always been my favorite animal. I got a whole bunch of mule deer I'm really proud of. Really, really big archery mule deer in the desert. Like, that's my favorite. Like, if I had to pick a hunt, it's like a desert hunt, glassing like hours and hours and hours, and then like stalking in on some buck bedded under a small bush. That's like my favorite hunt, and I just love it. But
that's cool.
I mean, I like elk hunting too, or javelina. Like, I like hunting anything, small game, like whatever. I just love hunting, but mule deer is definitely my favorite, especially in like a desert terrain.
Javelinas are awesome. Yeah. I love how stupid they are. Like, if you want to go out and test equipment, do it on javelinas because they're dumb.
They just can't see, dude.
Yeah. I remember like the first time I was javelina hunting, I was like trying to stalk through the bushes and, not move and be quiet and crawl. And my buddy was like, just get up and walk down the road. And I'm like, they're in the road. They'll see me. He's like, no, they won't. And I'm like, what are you talking about? So I'm literally like walking down the road and there's just like 40 javelinas in the road ahead of me. And I'm like, they're not looking at me. And he's like, yeah, they're idiots, dude. And I'm like, cool. And so, of course, then once you get like 40 yards from them, don't just keep walking up at them. Yeah. But I'm like, man, this is awesome, dude. We're about to do some broadhead testing to the max, bro.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. No, I like javelina hunting. Like, this year we stalked these javelina that lived like way up at the top of these huge mountains. So these were like mountain javelina, and they were so cool. I always wanted to hunt them up there. It finally worked out where we were able to go up there and stalk them on this high mountain. It was steep, and the video's on YouTube, but it's pretty crazy. Like, we get in, and it's Brianna's first time trying to get a javelina, and like when you're in a group of them on the side of a mountain, it's so chaotic, and her buck fever was through the roof, and she's missed a couple times, and then finally pinwheeled one, and then I had a tag, so I step up and shoot one, and it's on film. It's pretty crazy. The hill we're on was so steep that when I shot this javelina, he dropped right there, but then he started to tumble down the hill, and you watch him just like blitz like a bowling ball down this hill for like 20 yards. I've never seen anything like it, dude. He's just like rolling, and then he starts to like catch air off of rocks and stuff. It was like, oh my gosh, it was a wild ride. He came right to us, dude. It was insane, but it was so
cool.
fun to watch her like in that chaos, because a javelina hunt is chaotic, right? Can be, and it was fun to see her like in that environment,
Yeah, javelina hunting's fun for sure.
100%.
So, James, where all can they find and follow Bow Disciples at?
Yeah, anywhere. TikTok, Facebook, Instagram, YouTube's our main thing. And then our website, bowdisciples.com, has the information on our 3D shoot, May 18, 19, Bow Disciples Challenge. Everyone should try to come to that. You should come and pop up a booth if you got nothing going on. But yeah, it's going to be awesome. So come to that, hang out, and dude, I appreciate you having me on. This was awesome.
Guys, if you're a traditional archer and you have not checked out Three Rivers Archery, what are you waiting for? Three Rivers Archery is your one-stop shop for all things traditional archery. They have the largest in-stock selection of traditional archery equipment anywhere. Same-day shipping, very, very, very knowledgeable. Listen, I use Three Rivers all the time. If I've got a question on tuning, if I've got a question on broadheads, if I've got a question on brace height or anything like that, I use Three Rivers for everything. They know the products because they use the products. Three Rivers Archery is by far the gold standard when it comes to traditional archery. So guys, if you're just getting into traditional archery, I would encourage you to use Three Rivers as a resource for knowledge and understanding and growing and learning, and as a place to get all those products that you're going to be needing as you take this journey. Well, guys, thank you so much for listening. I would encourage you to go check out Bow Disciples. And but guys, I do want to encourage you to just start thinking about the way that you carry yourself when it comes to hunting. Think about the way that you represent the hunting community. Like James talked about, sharing a story is a powerful thing. And the way that you can share a story on social media these days, social media is built for sharing stories. So share your stories in a way that will inspire and encourage other people to go out and try it as well, or at least educate them as to why we do it, rather than just a grip and grin that makes you feel cool and makes it get a bunch of likes. Try to do it in a way that will educate people as to why we do what we do and how we do it. But guys, thank you so much for listening. Y'all have a fantastic week.